Today we're comparing the top two 1 kilowatt hour portable power stations. The first one is the EcoFlow Delta 3 Plus, and then the Anker SOLIX C1000. Let's check out the differences. We're going to start by setting up these solar panels that are underneath these things. This is a 220 watt panel with the EcoFlow, and the one over there with the Anker is actually just a 200 watt. Now there's some really cool things on the EcoFlow I want to show you, as well as the price of each one of these. That'll be at the very end, including the bundle with the power station and the solar panel underneath. They have a similar sized footprint, but to give you exact specifics, you can see that the EcoFlow Delta 3 Plus is a little bit larger. Now the weight is very similar as well. However, it's actually a little bit heavier over here on the Anker side at 28.4 pounds. And there's actually a reason for that we'll get into. Now, as far as the features and layout of everything, we've got an XT60 connector here, 600 watts, AC input up to 1500 watts, reset button for overcurrent protection. Our AC output ports right here, there's 6 of them. We've got 2 USB-C, 2 USB-A, as well as a 12-volt car socket. And then on this end, and the screen's there too, this end over here, we've got our expansion battery port. So 3 sides that we could have cords coming out of the C1000. Over here, we actually only have 2 sides. Right here on this end, we've got our screen, 6 AC output ports, although 3 of them don't have a ground prong, but they have turned them in a unique way to allow for perhaps better configuration of your plugs, 2 USB-C, 2 USB-A, some buttons at the top. On this end, we've got 2 XT60 ports, 500 watts each of solar can come into those, which is amazing. And down here, we have our expansion battery port, AC input, 12-volt car socket, along with 2 12-volt barrel plugs, 3 amps each. This one has an IP rating of IP65 for the battery pack. Now, I'm not really sure if that's the entire power station. In fact, I kind of don't think that it is. I think just the battery pack is IP65 rated, which is cool. There's no IP rating on the Anker that I am aware of. So comment down below, do you think that the IP rating actually means something on the EcoFlow? Because to me, if it's not the entire thing that's rated to that, then just the battery pack being that way doesn't seem like it would really matter that much. Now, as far as exact capacity, we have 1,056 watt hours over here and 1,024 watt hours on the EcoFlow. So that's probably the reason why the Anker is just a tiny bit heavier. Now, if you want to, you can expand both of these batteries to have additional capacity. With the extra battery on the Anker, it's going to be exactly that same 1,056 watt hours, so you can double this to about 2 kilowatt hours. On the EcoFlow, you can pair it with 1 expansion battery as well. However, they have multiple different expansion batteries that are all the way up to a capacity of 4 kilowatt hours, meaning that you can expand the EcoFlow up to 5 kilowatt hours versus the Anker can only technically expand to 2. Our AC output on these guys is both going to be 1800 watts continuous. However, they have the ability to surge and use their different features. One on this side is called X Boost. Over here it's called Surge Pad, and basically it varies the voltage down in order to decrease the amount of actual wattage being put out to resistance type appliances, like if you're using a griddle or an electric tea kettle. It's going to be able to surge up to 2,400 watts here and 2,600 watts on this side. But in all reality, 1,800 watts is the realistic continuous output, but those features can be useful in certain situations. Slight difference on the USB-C ports. We've got 100 watt and 30 watt on the Anker, and on the EcoFlow we have 2 that are both 140 watts, although I think you can only get a total of 140 between those 2. Now, both of these can act as a UPS, which is actually a really useful feature. I actually have a Cyber Power old lead acid UPS that I have connected to my desktop at home that allows, when the power goes out, to switch over automatically and not cause my computer to shut down and lose data. So both of these can do that. This one, however, on the C1000 is able to do it in 20 milliseconds. The EcoFlow Delta 3 Plus can do it in 10 milliseconds, which is NAS grade UPS. It also has a port with USB-C that can communicate with the device it's connected to tell it to shut down when there has been a power outage, which is really interesting. Now, you can discharge and charge these at different temperatures, and this is actually probably one of the bigger differentiating factors for me between these two units. On the Anker C1000, you can discharge from 4 below 0 Fahrenheit all the way up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. On the EcoFlow, that range is going to be 14 degrees up to 113 degrees. So discharging, obviously, that's when you're going to be using your power station. And so for me in Minnesota, I would probably, if that was the only thing I was basing my decision off of, probably go the route of the Anker, because when I go out ice fishing, sometimes it is 4 below zero, and if I want to be able to actually use power from the unit, it's going to need to be the Anker. Now, if I lived in a warmer climate, this can handle 9 degrees warmer than the C1000 can, so I'd probably lean towards the EcoFlow if you're in a generally warmer climate. But on the charging side of things, when you're going to charge these up, both of them have to be at a minimum temperature of 32 degrees. And then the top range is the same, with 104 with the Anker and 113 on the EcoFlow. On your phone, there's an app that can connect to these guys, and there's different features with both of them. There's a lot of cool features with the Anker and with the EcoFlow, but the EcoFlow has some more interesting ones right now, with the ability to use time of use mode, UPS notifications. So when this thing does go into UPS mode and it's powering those really important loads, it's going to send you a notification on your phone, or at least you can configure it to. And it's also going to send you low battery alerts and long-term storage reminders, because you're supposed to top these things up to 100% once every 3 months. And if you forget to do that, it can cause premature battery degradation, and you don't want to have that happening. Now, sound. The ability to have these things run silently can be really important to a lot of people. Now, on the Anker, it's pretty quiet, but it's not as quiet as the EcoFlow. And I actually did a test, and I'll roll that footage right now. This is outputting like 1500 watts, and this one's taking in that same amount. That fan must be so efficient. Listen to this. But let's switch it and charge the opposite direction. So a little bit more efficient design on the EcoFlow side from a sound management perspective. Now, when you're recharging via AC, so plugging it into the wall, these charge at a very similar rate. If you have the fast charging mode turned on, which you actually have to turn on manually with the Anker, it can charge in as little as 58 minutes, which is pretty fantastic. Now, on the EcoFlow, it's able to do it in 56. Now, this does have a slightly larger battery, so I'm going to call that a tie on the ability to recharge fully via their fast charging feature. Anker is saying that you can get up to 3,000 cycles and 80% battery capacity. EcoFlow, it's 4,000 and maintaining 80% capacity of the original battery. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, the hybrid charging of the EcoFlow is really, really nice. And basically that means that right now I'm charging via solar, although a cloud just went in front of the sun. We are still, let's see, inputting approximately 20 watts, so a little bit. But if I were to go ahead and take my cord here and plug it into the wall, or the C1000 in this case, I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, press the button, and plug this into the back of the EcoFlow so we can begin charging it. It's going to use a combination of the AC power and the solar power to be able to charge this thing up, which is really nice, because oftentimes you have your solar array plugged in, or your temporary panels, and you're charging 400 watts or whatever it is, but you need to get it done by a certain time. Well, now you can plug it into the wall, set how fast you want it to charge from that, and also still utilize your solar. So right now, let's see if the sun, I don't know if the sun's going to come back out, but we've got 1,400 watts coming into the EcoFlow total, but only 1,374 watts is coming from this AC cable right here. The rest of it is coming from the solar panel. So it's using hybrid charging. And I think that's a really important feature that these things should definitely have. Now, if I flip it around the opposite direction and charge the C1000 with our EcoFlow, it's not going to do that. We're going to plug it in here, and we're going to lose our solar input. Is going to go away, and it's going to exclusively charge from AC. So that's what that hybrid charging means, and I think every power station should have that feature, but right now they don't. So that's definitely a point for the EcoFlow. On the solar charging side of the equation, we've got a total of 600 watts that we can put into here versus 1,000 watts over here. You have two separate XT60 connectors, so you have to max both of those out in order to get that 1,000 watts. Now, you've always been able to charge power stations with a car. However, typically it takes a really long time, like probably close to 10 hours to charge these things from 0 to 100 with a standard 10 amp 12 volt accessory plug. Now, with the EcoFlow, they sell a separate accessory that is going to connect to your car's charging system. And typically that's going to connect actually right onto the battery of your vehicle. And when the vehicle's running, it's going to be able to pull energy from your alternator. And you can select anywhere from, I don't know, I think it starts at like 100 watts up to 800 watts of range that you can pull from your vehicle's charging system. You need to make sure that you're not pulling more than about a third of your alternator's capacity. So you have to look that up to figure out how many amps your alternator can actually handle. But if you've got a big enough alternator, you can charge this thing up in as little as 1.3 hours at 800 watts, which is pretty phenomenal. And that's going to connect to the same spot where your solar input is via the XT60 connector. And I don't know if that means that technically we could use that same accessory to charge the Anker, but I'm probably not supposed to talk about that. So let's move on. One feature that the Anker has that the EcoFlow does not is an integrated light. This is actually really handy for camping applications. EcoFlow makes a smart generator, a gas generator, that you can pair up with their batteries so that when the battery gets low, the generator can start, recharge the battery, and then shut the gas generator back off, and then you continue to use battery. And I think that's a really useful feature for camping scenarios, and anytime you don't necessarily have enough solar, but you don't want to run the generator all the time. Seems kind of cool. Both of these have very similar warranties, 5 years, but they're claiming 10 years of usable life expectancies on these. Now, to the pricing. They're very similar, and the EcoFlow is a little bit newer, but as of posting this video, we've got the Anker SOLIX C1000 at $550. If you want to pair it with the panel that's right underneath it, which is a 200 watt panel, you're looking at $829. For the EcoFlow, we're at a slightly higher price of $650. However, if you pair it with the 220 watt panel that's right underneath it, that's only going to be $799. So those prices are with coupons, and their pricing structures are kind of interesting with these solar battery companies. So click the links in the description to check the most recent price. Just make sure that you click to apply that coupon before you check out in order to get those lower prices. So right now, if you want to get a 200 or 220 watt solar panel with your battery station, the EcoFlow is actually a little bit better value. Thanks so much to EcoFlow for sponsoring this video. I actually gave them a few different options of what I could have done with this for this video, and I said, well, hey, how about let's do a comparison to the Anker? And they said, go for it. And so I appreciate that, because just going through and talking about a single product, it's really hard to like kind of have anything to compare it to in order to make a really good decision. So if you found value in this video, smash that thumbs up button, subscribe, and if you are willing, click one of those links in the description if you're thinking about purchasing one of these units.